Hello, and welcome to this week's Pillar Guidance for the Our Raw Material Arena. I am Tavish Cardiff, and it is Conflict Week. This is the 8th pillar, but you can always start at any time. We are dealing with the physical body in Conflict Week and all of the ways that we tend to get tight or lose our flexibility when it comes down to something that bothers us. So Conflict Week is really about how much can we clear out of the way so that we get to be choosy about our conflicts, so that we're not just ready to fight anyone or anything. And if we back up to the previous week's Values and Ideals Week, if we are clear about our own personal values, it makes it a lot easier to decide which conflicts are worth us getting involved in and which are worth us sitting back and listening, because we might learn something. Conflict is a really big one for this time, especially. I live in Kansas City, and the biggest conflict, if you're not wanting to engage in the political conflict that we could breathe around all day long, we can turn to football and the Super Bowl, which will be tomorrow. And so this week enters a period for Kansas City of ego-soul conflict. There is definitely a pride and a confidence that the ego wants to produce for Kansas City, but underneath us, there's just been a lot that's gone through Kansas City. It is wholeness. We harness the energy that moved between the East and the West and between the North and the South, and there's just something about this particular space that is creative. Walt Disney lived here for a while. The imagination, the creativity, and the wholeness of all of the terribly awesome things in a good way and terribly awesome things in a bad way that have happened here. And that's what makes it so exciting that we are looking for a third victory in the Super Bowl, drawing on this energy that has really built Kansas City into something that only comes from being part of it. So as a Kansas City tied person, if we are able to tap into that soulful energy rather than the ego pride that the last few years brings us just in terms of a skill set, I think we do a lot better in the overall conflict of the game. And I think that the players of the Chiefs know that. I know that underneath it all, they really do resonate with the vibration of longevity and history and awesome terribleness that comes out of Kansas City. My personal experience with conflict right now has to do with a few situations that I have zero control over. And that's a tough thing for me. I want to affect things. I'm a person that wants to over-explain or make something different, or, just fill in the gaps where there seems to be ignorance, bring people into understanding my point of view so that if I'm bothering them, they at least understand why. And I have done that to the point where, I'm pushing on boundaries all over the place. And I know that I am. I try to notice where I'm pushing, and when I see it, back up. But there are a few people close to me that seem to be a constant, push, pull, trigger situation. And for those people, I'm holding love around the conflict. I'm not engaging. I'm recognizing where I bother them. I don't have to own the thing that they believe that I do to recognize how they see it or what it looks like to them. And when I check in with that and say, well, what can I do? I can't make the situation better. But my answer comes in a very soulful way and says, you don't need to make it better. It's okay for you to be saying the things that you're saying and hit people wrong. You can't control how they receive whatever you're bringing or doing. And that has been one of the most liberating, I think, lessons for me in terms of letting go of that tight grip on wanting a certain reaction from people, or thinking that if I can just explain enough, I can get them to see what I mean. And I think coming to terms with the idea that that can't happen with everybody is one of the best things that one of the best tools that we have to bridge ourselves to something that works towards compromise, because it's not enough to see the problem. We can't cut out everybody that we don't agree with. seeing the problem, seeing that we, come from different sides and are always going to kind of push against each other, makes us find a way to come together in the best way that we can, so that we coexist, so that we give awareness to the difference and honor the space that each person needs in the best way possible. Now, finding agreement on that is a whole other story, but this keeps us in constant conflict. Our world is in conflict, and the idea that we would ever live without it is kind of silly given, history. So join me in not celebrating conflict, but welcoming it enough to get to know it, and to get to know where you want to step in and where you want to observe, so that you can support what anything in your environment needs. Conflict week is a time to breathe deeply, clear your body of all of the things that have had you just like wound up and tense. I know that I can get that way in a span of seconds if I start thinking about something that bothers me. And I'll notice, just my hands getting tight or my shoulders rolling in. And as soon as you notice that stuff happening, bringing it back up and imagining what it's going to take to clear your body back out, these are the things of the conflict pillar. So play around with conflict in your own mind-body connection. Play around with what you can back off from instead of fighting, because you're not going to affect it anyway. And enjoy what you can about the discovery of conflict all through you. It's fun to search out conflict. It's fun to play around with what it does when we release it and how we can fill that space with something creative. We don't try to do this very often, so it might seem strange, but the more we practice this ability to take the negative stuff, set it aside, bring in a creative ideal thought, and turn that into something that grows and vibrates and actually turns into something, manifests, that is a space that we have available to work from that we don't even recognize hardly at all. Only in our wildest dreams, only in coincidence, only in these tiny little miracles. Back up, everybody. We have this stuff available to us all the time. Get out of your own internal conflict about what magic is available to you and tap into the magic that is you. Challenge for this week. And I'm going to challenge myself to this one pretty hard. Every time you feel yourself judging something or someone, back up and clear it out of your body. Let it run through your mind. Let yourself gain some growth around creating space for whatever it is that you can't handle in the moment. We're working on breathing. The energy needs to be on what you want, on what's positive, on the outcome, on everything that you can imagine that is good around a thing, because the more space that we provide to be in fear or angry or bothered, which we're always going to be, where we live on this earth, the more space we give to back up from that and allow it to be, and only step in when something is really, really important to us. That doesn't mean don't have an opinion. That means back up and listen until it seems like there's a space for you to make a difference. And I think that is what we can do the best with conflict, other than recognize where it hurts us, is to also use the things that bother us to be an indicator of what our soul wants, an indicator of what the soul through the body is trying to express as this individual being that we are anyway. That's probably getting a little deep for weekly pillar guidance, but conflict also kind of goes to the house of Scorpio, so let's just call it some deep roots, checking in with that separation, the feeling of separation from the whole that makes us feel bothered or at any sort of sense of dis-ease anyway. Come back next week. We will get some energy going around the emotion of our intentions and start harnessing them so that we can channel them in a direction that helps us manifest what we want. Have a great week.